What if everything you believe about strength is wrong? Not just a little off, but completely upside down. We're taught that strength is about power, muscles, domination. But Bruce Lee rejected all of that. He claimed that strength, at least the way we understand it, is an illusion. Sounds crazy, right? How can something so real, so visible, be an illusion? But when you look deeper, you realize he wasn't talking about physical force at all. He was exposing a hidden truth about control, adaptability, and the mind. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. True power comes from adaptability, not brute force. And that idea directly challenges one of the most deeply ingrained beliefs people carry about strength. From a young age, most of us are conditioned to associate power with physical dominance, size, or the ability to overpower others. We see it in movies, sports, and even everyday life where the strongest person is often assumed to be the most capable. But this perspective is narrow, and more importantly, misleading. Adaptability, the ability to adjust, respond, and evolve in real time, is a far more reliable and enduring form of strength. Brute force operates on a simple principle: apply maximum energy to overcome resistance. While this can work in certain situations, it has clear limitations. It depends heavily on conditions being favorable and often fails when faced with unpredictability. If the environment shifts, if the opponent changes strategy, or if circumstances become complex, brute force begins to break down. It is rigid, and rigidity is fragile. When something rigid encounters pressure outside its expected range, it cracks. Adaptability, on the other hand, thrives in uncertainty. It does not rely on a single approach or fixed method. Instead, it allows a person to observe, learn, and respond fluidly. This kind of strength is not about overpowering what stands in your way, but about understanding it and adjusting accordingly. It is the difference between pushing against a locked door and realizing you can simply turn the handle. One approach wastes energy, the other conserves it while achieving the same result. In real-world scenarios, adaptability often proves to be the deciding factor between success and failure. Consider situations where conditions are constantly changing: business environments, competitive sports, or even personal relationships. In these contexts, the strongest individual is not the one who can impose their will the hardest, but the one who can read the situation accurately and shift their behavior to match it. This requires awareness, flexibility, and a willingness to let go of ego-driven responses. A person relying solely on brute force tends to resist change. They double down on what they know, even when it stops working. This creates a cycle where more effort is applied with diminishing returns. Over time, this not only leads to failure but also exhaustion. Adaptability breaks this cycle by encouraging a different mindset, one that values efficiency over effort and strategy over sheer intensity. There is also a psychological dimension to this idea. People who equate strength with force often feel threatened when their approach is challenged. They may interpret the need to adapt as a sign of weakness, which prevents them from evolving. In contrast, those who understand adaptability as strength are more open to feedback, more willing to experiment, and less attached to a fixed identity. This makes them more resilient in the face of setbacks because they are not defined by a single way of being. Adaptability also enhances decision-making. When you are flexible in your thinking, you can consider multiple perspectives and choose the most effective course of action. You are not locked into a predetermined response. This allows for creativity and innovation, which are forms of power that brute force cannot access. It opens up possibilities that would otherwise remain invisible to someone focused only on exerting control. In physical disciplines, the contrast becomes even more apparent. A rigid fighter who relies purely on strength can be predictable. Their movements are often direct and forceful, but also easier to anticipate. An adaptable fighter, however, can change rhythm, direction, and strategy in an instant. They use timing, positioning, and awareness to their advantage, often requiring less energy while achieving greater impact. The adaptable individual does not meet force with force. They redirect it, neutralize it, or avoid it entirely. This principle extends beyond physical confrontation into everyday challenges. Life rarely presents problems in a consistent or predictable manner. Unexpected obstacles, shifting priorities, and evolving goals are part of the experience. In such an environment, clinging to a single method or mindset becomes a liability. Adaptability allows you to navigate these changes without losing momentum. It keeps you aligned with reality, rather than stuck in outdated assumptions. Another important aspect is sustainability. Brute force is energy-intensive. It demands continuous input to maintain results, and over time this can lead to burnout. Adaptability, by contrast, is efficient. It focuses on using the least amount of effort necessary to achieve the desired outcome. This not only preserves energy but also allows for long-term consistency. A person who adapts can maintain performance over time, while someone relying on force may peak quickly and decline just as fast. Adaptability also fosters learning. When you are willing to adjust, you are naturally more observant. You pay attention to what works and what doesn't, and you refine your approach accordingly. This creates a feedback loop that leads to continuous improvement. Brute force, in contrast, often ignores feedback. It assumes that more effort is the solution, rather than a different approach. This limits growth and keeps the individual stuck at a certain level of capability. In social dynamics, adaptability plays a crucial role as well. Interactions with others are rarely straightforward. People have different perspectives, emotions, and motivations. Trying to dominate every interaction with force can lead to conflict and resistance. Adapting your communication style, tone, and approach allows for better understanding and cooperation. It creates influence rather than opposition. Ultimately, adaptability represents a deeper level of control. It is not about controlling others or the environment directly, but about controlling your response to them. This internal control is more powerful because it remains stable even when external conditions change. It gives you the ability to remain effective regardless of what you face. This perspective shifts the definition of strength entirely. Instead of measuring it by how much force you can exert, it becomes about how well you can adjust, respond, and evolve. It values awareness over aggression, flexibility over rigidity, and intelligence over intensity. Rigidity creates weakness, flexibility creates control, and while that may sound counterintuitive at first, it becomes increasingly clear when you examine how both traits behave under pressure. Rigidity gives the illusion of stability. It appears strong, unyielding, and dependable. People often associate it with discipline and certainty, believing that sticking firmly to a fixed way of thinking or acting is a sign of strength. But the problem with rigidity is not how it performs in calm conditions, it's how it responds when something unexpected happens. When a rigid system is pushed beyond its limits, it doesn't adapt. It resists. And resistance, when taken too far, leads to collapse. Think of something stiff and unbending. Under enough force, it snaps. The same principle applies to human behavior, decision-making, and even emotional responses. When a person refuses to adjust their mindset or approach, they become vulnerable to anything that doesn't fit within their narrow framework. Instead of responding effectively, they break down, make poor decisions, or become overwhelmed. Flexibility operates in a completely different way. It doesn't try to resist change, it works with it. A flexible person is not bound by a single perspective or method. They can shift their thinking, alter their approach, and respond in ways that match the situation. This doesn't mean they lack structure or discipline. It means their structure is dynamic rather than fixed. They have a foundation, but they are not trapped by it. Control in this context is not about domination. It's about maintaining effectiveness regardless of what happens. A rigid person might feel in control when everything is predictable, but that control is fragile. The moment something deviates from expectations, it starts to slip. A flexible person, however, maintains control because they are not dependent on conditions staying the same. They adjust in real time, which allows them to stay aligned with reality rather than fighting against it. One of the key reasons rigidity leads to weakness is that it limits perception. When you are fixed in your thinking, you tend to filter out information that doesn't match your beliefs. This creates blind spots. You may miss important signals, overlook better options, or fail to recognize changes in your environment. Flexibility expands perception. It allows you to take in more information, consider different angles, and make decisions based on a broader understanding of what's happening. This difference becomes especially important in high-pressure situations. Under stress, rigid individuals often default to familiar patterns, even if those patterns are no longer effective. They may double down on a failing strategy simply because it's what they know. Flexibility, on the other hand, enables a person to pause, reassess, and pivot. Instead of reacting automatically, they respond intentionally. This creates a sense of control that is rooted in awareness rather than habit. There is also an emotional component to this dynamic. Rigidity is often tied to fear of uncertainty, fear of losing control, or fear of being wrong. To protect themselves, people create fixed rules and expectations. These structures provide a sense of security, but they also become limitations. When reality doesn't match those expectations, it creates tension and discomfort. Flexibility reduces this tension by accepting that change is inevitable. Instead of trying to force stability, it embraces movement. This doesn't mean flexibility is about being passive or indecisive. In fact, it requires a high level of engagement. A flexible person is constantly observing, adjusting, and refining their actions. They are active participants in their environment, not just reacting to it. This level of awareness gives them a kind of control that rigid individuals cannot achieve. They are not locked into a single path, so they can navigate around obstacles instead of trying to push through them. In practical terms, flexibility allows for better problem solving. When faced with a challenge, a rigid mindset might approach it in one specific way regardless of whether that approach is effective. If it fails, the response is often to try harder rather than differently. A flexible mindset, however, explores multiple solutions. It adapts based on feedback and adjusts until it finds what works. This makes it more efficient and more successful over time. Flexibility also plays a crucial role in communication and relationships. People are complex and interactions rarely follow a predictable script. A rigid approach to communication, expecting others to think, feel, or respond in a certain way, can lead to misunderstandings and conflict. Flexibility allows you to adjust your tone, perspective, and expectations based on the other person and the situation. This creates better understanding and more effective interactions. Another important aspect is resilience. Rigidity may appear strong on the surface, but it struggles to recover from disruption. When something goes wrong, a rigid system often cannot reconfigure itself quickly enough to adapt. Flexibility, however, is inherently resilient. Because it is designed to adjust, it can absorb shocks and continue functioning. This makes it more stable in the long run, even if it appears less solid in the short term. Control through flexibility also involves letting go of the need to be right all the time. A rigid person may cling to their position even when evidence suggests they should change. This attachment creates resistance and limits growth. A flexible person is more willing to update their beliefs and strategies based on new information. This openness allows them to stay effective in a changing environment. In many ways, flexibility is a form of intelligence. It requires the ability to process information, recognize patterns, and adjust behavior accordingly. It is not random or chaotic. It is responsive and intentional. This makes it a powerful tool for navigating complexity. Rigidity simplifies the world by forcing it into a fixed structure, but that simplicity comes at the cost of accuracy. Flexibility embraces complexity and works within it. Over time, the advantages of flexibility compound. Each adjustment leads to better understanding, which leads to better decisions, which leads to better outcomes. This creates a cycle of improvement that strengthens control. Rigidity, in contrast, often leads to stagnation. Without the ability to adapt, growth slows or stops entirely. The idea that flexibility creates control challenges the traditional notion that control comes from holding things tightly in place. In reality, trying to hold everything fixed often leads to losing control when something inevitably changes. Flexibility offers a different kind of control, one that moves with circumstances rather than against them. Mental mastery outweighs physical strength, and this idea cuts deeper than it first appears because it shifts the entire foundation of what people consider power. Physical strength is visible, measurable, and easy to compare. It shows itself in muscle, force, speed, and endurance. Because of this, it often becomes the default way people judge capability. But mental mastery operates on a different level, one that is less obvious, yet far more influential in determining outcomes. At its core, mental mastery is about control over your thoughts, emotions, and reactions. It is the ability to remain focused under pressure, to make clear decisions in chaos, and to stay composed when circumstances become difficult. While physical strength can give someone an advantage in specific situations, it is the mind that decides how that strength is used, when it is applied, and whether it is effective at all. A person may have immense physical power, but without mental discipline, that power can become inconsistent or even self-defeating. They might act impulsively, waste energy on unnecessary actions, or lose control in critical moments. Mental mastery prevents this by creating a sense of awareness and intentionality. It ensures that actions are guided by purpose rather than impulse. One of the key elements of mental mastery is focus. In any challenging situation, distractions are inevitable. Fear, doubt, external noise, and internal pressure all compete for attention. A strong mind can filter these distractions and concentrate on what truly matters. This ability to direct attention precisely where it is needed often makes the difference between success and failure. Physical strength without focus is scattered and inefficient, while mental clarity channels effort into effective action. Another important aspect is emotional control. Emotions are powerful forces that can either enhance performance or disrupt it. Anger, fear, frustration, and overconfidence can all cloud judgment. A person who lacks control over their emotions may react unpredictably, making decisions that are driven by temporary feelings rather than long-term goals. Mental mastery allows a person to experience emotions without being controlled by them. It creates a space between stimulus and response, where thoughtful action can take place. This becomes especially critical in high-stakes situations. When pressure increases, the body may be ready to act, but if the mind is not stable, performance suffers. Panic can override training, hesitation can replace confidence, and doubt can weaken execution. A mentally disciplined individual remains steady. They trust their preparation, stay present, and respond with clarity. This stability gives them an advantage that physical strength alone cannot provide. Mental mastery also involves strategic thinking. Instead of relying solely on force, a strong mind looks for patterns, opportunities, and efficient solutions. It asks questions like, what is the best approach? Where is the leverage? How can this be done with less effort and greater impact? This kind of thinking transforms challenges into problems that can be solved rather than obstacles that must be crushed. It shifts the focus from exertion to effectiveness. In many cases, strategy can completely neutralize physical advantages. A smaller or less physically strong individual can outperform someone stronger by using timing, positioning, and intelligence. This is not about avoiding effort, but about applying it in the right way. Mental mastery ensures that every action has purpose and direction. Discipline is another pillar of mental strength. It is the ability to do what needs to be done consistently, regardless of mood or circumstances. Physical strength can fluctuate. It can be affected by fatigue, injury, or external conditions. But mental discipline creates consistency. It allows a person to maintain standards, follow through on commitments, and keep improving over time. This consistency builds a level of reliability that physical strength alone cannot sustain. There is also a strong connection between mental mastery and resilience. Life is unpredictable, and setbacks are inevitable. Physical strength may help in overcoming certain obstacles, but it does not guarantee recovery from failure or adversity. Mental strength, however, determines how a person responds to challenges. It influences whether they give up, adapt, or push forward. A resilient mind can absorb setbacks, learn from them, and continue moving without losing direction. self-awareness plays a crucial role as well. Understanding your own strengths, weaknesses, habits, and tendencies allows for better decision-making. Without this awareness, even a physically strong individual can make poor choices that limit their effectiveness. Mental mastery includes the ability to observe oneself objectively, recognize areas for improvement, and make necessary adjustments. This creates a continuous process of growth. Another dimension is patience. Physical strength often encourages immediate action, pushing, forcing, and reacting quickly. But not every situation benefits from speed or intensity. Sometimes the best move is to wait, observe, and choose the right moment. Mental mastery provides the patience to hold back when necessary and act only when it is most effective. This timing can amplify results while reducing unnecessary effort. Confidence is also shaped by the mind. True confidence is not based on physical ability alone, but on trust in one's judgment and preparation. A mentally strong person does not rely solely on their physical capabilities. They rely on their ability to think, adapt, and respond. This creates a deeper, more stable form of confidence that is not easily shaken by external factors. Mental mastery also enhances learning. A strong mind is open to new information, willing to question assumptions, and capable of integrating new ideas. This accelerates growth and improvement. Physical strength can be developed through repetition and training, but without the right mindset, progress can plateau. Mental mastery ensures that learning continues, that skills evolve, and that performance improves over time. In competitive environments, the mental aspect often becomes the deciding factor. When physical abilities are relatively equal, the person with greater mental control gains the advantage. They make better decisions, stay calmer under pressure, and adapt more quickly to changing conditions. This edge can turn small differences into significant outcomes. Even beyond competition, mental mastery shapes how a person experiences life. It influences how they handle stress, how they pursue goals, and how they interact with others. It creates a sense of internal stability that does not depend on external circumstances. This stability allows for clearer thinking, better choices, and more effective action across all areas of life. The idea that mental mastery outweighs physical strength is not about diminishing the value of the body, but about recognizing the hierarchy between the two. The mind directs, the body executes. Without proper direction, execution loses its effectiveness. With strong direction, even limited physical ability can be used to achieve powerful results.